Hey, I'm Pascal from Orangepixel and welcome to another video. I'm about to wrap up Regulator City, the biggest project. I worked on it for 4 years, never was the intention to work on it for that long. I will do a video on all the stuff that went wrong at some point after the release. This also means that I can now start focusing on the next project. And luckily I was already tinkering with something that I want to get back into and start working on. And that's Space Grunts 3, the third part in the series. The original game, released in 2015, did pretty well and I want to get back into that world. It's a turn-based game, but you can play it like an arcade game very quickly if you want. A little bit like chess. You can play it as fast as you want, and if you need a little more extra time to think, you can just pause it for a little bit and come up with the right strategy to continue and then move at your own pace again. So I can't wait to dive back into it. However, I do want to add a twist. I don't want to recreate the original game, so I'm currently prototyping the game. I already had something up and running. The basis for turn-based stuff is there. Now we need to come up with the stuff that makes it a fun game. And I can't wait to dive into that after the intro. So the prototype I've been working on in between all the other stuff is right now set up for all the turn-based things. Now if you think about a turn-based game, you might think that you just need the turn for the player and then a turn for everything that's not a player, but it requires a couple of extra steps. Luckily I figured all these things out for Space Grunts 1, and I did it a little bit better now for the third installment because I learned so much back then. But there are steps between those things. So let's say it's the player's turn. You stand there, you decide to shoot a bullet, you press the action button, end of your turn. The next turn is that bullet flying while everything waits. Entities can't move, player can't move. Projectiles are moving until they hit stuff and they do things. And then it's the next turn for the entities, and now they can't do anything yet. They first have to check if they got hit, if there was damage done on the spot they were in. Maybe they were already standing on fire. That fire is now damaging them. They have to process all of that, and then it's their turn to actually do an action. So now they might move out of the way, they might shoot back at you, and once those entities all have done their action, it's again time to wait for those actions to play out. So they might have shot at you, now there's a bullet traveling towards you, we have to wait for that bullet to do its own thing. So now there's another turn for the player. Did you just get hit? That's pretty much the only check you need to do. Did you just get hit? If you have a shield, then you can handle all that. We got shielded, we whatever happens, and then we start at the beginning again, and it's the player's turn again. Now all of that is set up, so I have a full turn-based engine up and running for my game. I just need to come up with gameplay. Now I also have to be smart about this game's development. I don't want this to turn into a 4-year project. So I need to be smart on how I build things. Now the first thing was easy. We need some sort of maze, like a dungeon. And it so happens that I released a dungeon game earlier this year, Gauntlet of Power. It has very simple dungeon creation code. So I grabbed that and turned it into some sort of spaceship or space station. And it works for now. I might completely redo this, but I just need something to run around in and to see if all my other stuff is working. So I needed a dungeon in some sort of way, and this code does the job. So I now can run around, have turn-based things going. Time to actually implement some sort of gameplay. Now I have a little timer on the screen that says there are a certain amount of turns left. I had this vague idea of doing something with this so that you have to get to a certain point to recharge those turns, or maybe an event happens when the time runs out, like a lot of enemies or aliens are starting to attack you. I'm not sure yet, and I might completely remove it, but that's the fun of prototyping. I can just put a lot of stuff in there and see if it works or not. Now a few days ago I was just trying out different ideas in my head of what could work, what could be interesting, and I figured it could be interesting if you actually know where the aliens or enemies are, especially if we maybe add some sort of alien type predator that is really tough and you rather avoid it. What if you know where they are, and on your radar it shows where they are and how they are starting to move towards you. So I want to add a little radar thing, or expand the radar. Right now it shows the rooms you have been traveled to. Again, this is code copied from Gauntlet of Power. We're going to rewrite that. I just want to show you the whole layout and actually show you where the aliens or enemies are. And I think it could be interesting because then a little bit like Pac-Man. You know where the ghosts are and you try to adjust your path just to avoid them. Could be an interesting thing or element in this game. So let's create a little radar that shows more information than it does right now. All right, let's see where we are with the radar. And this looks pretty cool. So that wasn't a lot of hard work because, well, the radar is simply a smaller version of your map. And we now have it on screen, and I added a bunch of extra enemies for just to test this out. And there's now all the red dots on your radar and you can try to avoid them. It's already a little interesting thing, and this is really how I try to prototype my game. Now, of course, you can dive in and just write code and then you'll figure out that it might not be as interesting and you waste a lot of time. So always try to also play it in my head, which is difficult at times because you often get stuck in a certain little loop of what that could be and not see the bigger picture. But at least you can try out things like that, and then you just have to dive in and get things up and running as quickly as possible. Just find the least amount of work to figure out if a certain gameplay element is a lot of fun. And again, I don't want to repeat the regulated city problem where I had this idea of having AI squad that runs around with you and has your back, but I had nothing else besides that. So once I had that all up and running, which took way too long because it was technically more difficult than I expected, but it took so long that once I had it up and running, I was already a couple of months in development, and I still had no fun gameplay, and that took a long time. So I don't want to make that mistake. And on Gaunt of Power I did it like this. I just grabbed code and graphics from different projects, mixed them all up together until I found the right and fun amount of gameplay. And then I started building the game on top of it, and I have to do that the same way for Space Grunts. So for now I'm just gonna figure out if it's fun, if we can build a whole game on top of this, if it's interesting to keep playing it, and then we'll figure out all the extras around it. Just make sure that that core gameplay element is fun enough. So still a long way to go. So the first thing I noticed now playing it a little bit is that this is all hallways and rooms and nothing loops back. So we don't really have ways to avoid things. If I want to do it like this and have things that you can avoid, we need to make sure there's a path that you can take to avoid these things. So the maze generator will have to change. I just need to add a couple of extra rooms that maybe circle back around things. Not a fan of that. I might actually start making levels for it. I just added this whole level editor for Regulated City, and I figured out how to do Steam Workshop stuff in Regulated City. That took me a week to figure out. Would be pretty interesting to reuse all of that for Space Grunts 3 and have people come up with interesting level designs. So I might just design levels for this game. Not sure. Maybe a combination of both. For now, just to test these things out, make a more interesting level, make sure I can circle around and avoid things, and see where we end up then. So really what happens here, if more than one neighbor, we don't create the room. But now we actually want extra rooms that can loop back. So it shouldn't be a problem if they have more than one neighbors. Let's see what happens if we change this to more than two. So there are now rooms that can have two neighbors, and I think this can actually create intersection and looping rooms and hallways. Let's just see where it brings us. Okay, so that's a lot more looping and rooms connected. And of course the design isn't really interesting. It could probably be more interesting if we actually create interesting maps for the game by hand. But at least we can try out stuff now. I can actually move around and circle back to that room by going left, left. Alright, maybe adding some randomness to this could do the job. Let's see if we quit the game and... Okay, so let's make this bigger than one room, and our randomness value is smaller than 50%. Then return false. But we also don't want neighbors with too many rooms, so if bigger than 2, we always return false. No, let's do it first without that one, see what happens. There's now a 50% chance we get a room that interconnects and loops back. Already looking more interesting. Not all rooms are now interconnected. Yeah, this is getting close to what I had in mind. You can avoid stuff, but there will always be dangerous areas where you cannot avoid stuff. And that's a good thing. So yeah, I think this will be a more interesting level layout to try things out. Now we'll have to see what else we can do. It would be probably interesting if these creatures, well, not these, but some other type of creature is added to the game that haunts you, and that's not as easy to kill as these guys is. So that you really want to avoid getting into the same room with them. So let's create a new creature for that. I decided to grab one of the aliens from the original Space Grunts, those graphics added to this game. Again, just to have stuff on the screen and be able to see if the gameplay works. Now that took me maybe like less than 5 minutes. However, we're a few hours later now. I got lost in the whole entity system, trying to do something new, and that's something I haven't done in previous games, and that split up the whole decision tree of your entities, your enemies, and your whatever you're adding to your game into tiny portions and give them a certain weight, and then based on that weight they calculate what move they're gonna take. Now this is a very common system in many games. I just never used it, so now I'm trying to figure out how to properly add that to my game code. I shouldn't waste too much time on it, but it's never a bad idea to learn 1 or 2 new tricks that can actually work in multiple games. So if I get this to work, I could use it in all my games from now on. So that's what I've been spending my time on, and we now have some cool stuff going on, including the aliens that will hunt you down. Let me show you. So this is the alien from Space Grunts 1. It was one of the most terrible ones, who was very fast and you didn't want to see them coming at you. And we have a bunch of them on the radar, and he should be hunting me down. So I can go down because there's not a lot there. So we can take this one out for now, and then let's see. On the radar you should be seeing all these red dots are closing in on me, which gives a pretty eerie feeling, some tension that you want to somehow avoid getting killed by these guys. It's not a game yet, there's still a lot of stuff missing, but I can see the tension of this working. Now what if we combine these new aliens that hunt you with this turns left countdown? As this could act like a countdown. In 40 turns from now, you better prepare yourself or find some sort of area that you can control, because it's going to be swarmed with aliens. Or maybe you want to get out of this level completely, like some sort of extraction type game. It could be an interesting thing to play with, so I'm gonna try that. Of course, for that I would need a couple of things first. I need to be able to get killed by these creatures. And maybe we'll have to add some sort of tactical things, like maybe you should be able to set landmines or lock doors like this one, be able to lock it so that they can't open it. Yeah, the gameplay would need a couple of things, but having these things coming at you is a pretty cool first start. Let me just, I don't know, I just want to get away, even though they can't hurt me at all. But it's interesting to see, and they're coming towards me from all over the level. Alright, so not a bad start so far on this game. Right now it's Friday, and I gave myself just a day off from Regulated City. It's like a 20-80% thing. Work the whole week on a certain project, then give yourself a little time on side projects or maybe new projects. And that's what this is. So I still have a few hours on this day to tinker with it. So let me see what I can cook up in the remaining few hours on my Friday. Now a little bit later on my Friday, didn't get to do as much as I planned or hoped for. I did change one element in the gameplay, and that's this turn is now at 64. And when it's done, certain ooze things that are spread around the level, and there's a nest over here, will start spawning these predator-like creatures. So it gives you a sense of urgency that this timer is running out and you will have to do something. I'm not sure what yet, but you have to do something before these pink things, and I'm probably changing that in like egg-like structures, until they start hatching, and then this is gonna be the next turn. We got a lot of things coming at us, and this, I don't know, I like the urgency it brings. So we now have like an event that happens at a certain time in the level, and I could add items that actually extend that time. You could do things to make sure certain eggs that will be hatching are already gone up in flames or whatever. So we slowly have some gameplay starting to happen. Still not sure if this is going to be enough. I also reminded myself that a lot of the strategy in Space Guns 1 came from your weapon system. There were 3 weapons and they had a different area they would cover. So a rocket launcher would cover a longer area and then explode into different tiles, so it would kill everything in that area. Then we have like a railgun which would draw a straight line, and if you could line up enemies you would hit them all in one with one shot. And I think that's actually a pretty key tactical thing I had in Space Grunts that made that game fun and interesting. So now I have a weapon that can freely aim in all directions, and it gives you a random hit or miss result. But it might be more interesting if we have certain weapons that cover certain areas. And also, now that we get hunted by predators, it might be interesting to add a lot of gadgets and things so that you can start planning that. Before the event happens, you already have a certain area where you want to lure these creatures towards, and you have it set up for explosions or whatever. Signals, that loud noise that they don't like, or fire that will actually lock them in a certain area. And that sounds interesting, except it's not an end goal yet. I still also have to figure out what is your end goal in this level. Are you in this space station to kill all these creatures, or is there another goal? A lot of things to figure out. However, not today, because I'm ending my day, and next week I'll still be working on Regulated City, final week I think. Or at least to have it all wrapped up, and then we'll have to do some playtesting. I'm gonna ask for playtesters on the Discord at some point when I'm a little bit more comfortable and secure in how the game is. But it's gonna happen soon, and then I will be able to dive more into Space Gun 3. So that's gonna be a part of this channel. I'll be talking about it regularly until the game releases. And as mentioned a couple of times, it should not take 4 years. If possible, it would take 4 months. And that's kind of very short, but it sounds a lot better than 4 years. So we'll see where this all ends. For now, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you think about Space Grunts 3 and where I'm pushing this game, I guess. And if you have ideas for it, always open to hear them. Might completely ignore them, but I don't mind hearing them. So leave those in the comments below. And don't forget to hop on the Discord, come say hi, and I'll see you next week. Bye.